Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon so as not to miss out on our weekly content. If you want to know how to sum and count cells by their color, then you're in the right place, because in this video we'll be showing 4 different ways to sum and count cells according to their color without needing to write any VBA code. So without further ado, let's get started. Alright, so let's say that we have this sales data here and we have the cells having different fill colors or having different colors. So how can we count or sum the cells by their cell color? So in order to do that, the first way that we can use is by using the find and replace option in Excel, which we can find by either going to the home tab on the ribbon and clicking on find and select and find, or we can also press Ctrl and F on our keyboard, and then we'll need to find the cells by their format. So click on this arrow here and then click on choose format from cell, and let's say that we want to count the number of cells having this green color. So I'm gonna click on a cell having that green color here, and you can see here that we have a preview of the cells that we're gonna be able to find. And then if we click on find all here, you can see here that we have 5 cells that have been found. And that's because we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 cells in here. So it's also counted this cell. But if we need the cell at the bottom here having the word green not to be counted, we can just select the column that contains our sales figures and then click on find all, and you'll see here that it's only found 4 cells. And this does not find cells having conditional formatting. So these cells on the right here are being colored using conditional formatting, and we'll speak about that later, so just ignore them for now. So after finding that we have 4 green cells, we can just type 4 here, and then we can also search for the blue cells here, so we can choose the format of the blue cell and then do a find all as well, and we'll find that we have 4 blue cells in here, so we'll type 4, and we can also do the same here for the yellow cells, and we'll find that we have only 3 yellow cells, so we'll type 3 here. So as you can see here, this is one way of counting cells by their color, but it involves manual work because you will need to do the find and select on the column containing your cells that you need to count here, and then you need to type the numbers manually. And another drawback of this method is that you can't sum the cells using their color, you can only count them. Also, it doesn't work on conditional formatting, so using find and replace does not count cells that are colored via conditional formatting. So these cells are actually colored via conditional formatting, they are not colored using the regular fill color in here. Alright, so that's the first method, and it involves a lot of manual work. The upcoming methods will be more automated. Alright, so the second way that we can sum and count cells by their color is by using the subtotal function. And the subtotal function is like a Swiss knife, so it can wear many hats. It can do many different types of aggregations. So with the subtotal function, you can average, you can count A, max, min. It can wear many hats. However, you can see here that we have 2 sets of aggregation choices here. So the first input is the function number, so it's what kind of aggregation you want to do with it. Do you want to sum or count or max or min, or what do you want to do? And we have 2 sets here. We have a set that starts from 1 and ends with 11, and then we have 101 to 111. And actually the function number that we should use is one of the ones here that start with 100, so 101, 102, etc., because this set of function numbers involves ignoring hidden rows, and hidden rows are created by either hiding a row or filtering it. So if we choose count, for example here, so we'll perform a count, and then the reference here will be the cells that we need to count. We'll close the brackets and press enter. You can see here that it will tell us that we have 11 cells in this range. However, if we filter that range, so if you select any cell and then go to data and then filter, or press Control, Shift, and L on our keyboard here, and then we would filter by color. So if we filter here by the green color, you can see here it will tell us that we have 4 green cells, and if we filter by the blue, it will tell us you have 4, and if we filter by the yellow, it will tell us we have 3. So you can see here that it can actually count the number of cells. You can also do something else. So instead of counting, you can choose 109 here for summing. So this way it will give you the summation of the cells here. Let me just remove the filter from these cells. So you can see here it's giving us the summation of all the cells instead of the yellow cells. And it works also with conditional formatting. So if you copy it here and paste it under the conditional formatting cells here, you can see that the range is moved. And if we apply the filter here, it does filter for the conditionally formatted cells. So this is another way to sum and count cells by their color. Also, the subtotal function is what works with tables when you put an aggregation under the table. So if we copy and paste these cells here and then create a table out of it, an Excel table, we'll click OK here, and let's remove any styling from the table here. And if you select any cell in the table and then go to table design and click on the total row, you can see here that the total row is actually created by the subtotal function and the table references here. And you can change the function number, of course, to change the type of aggregation that you'd like to do. You can do a count, max, min. Just make sure to choose one of those function numbers that start with 100. And here it gives us 11. This is the total number of rows, but we need to make sure to change the number formatting because it's not $11, it's 11 cells. All right, so this is the second way to sum and count cells by color, which is by using the subtotal function. All right, so the third way that you can sum and count cells by color is by using the aggregate function. So the aggregate function is similar to the subtotal function in the fact that it also can wear many hats. It's like a Swiss knife, so you can do many types of aggregations with it. So the first input is the type of aggregation, and unlike the subtotal function where we have 2 sets of aggregation choices, we only have 1 set of aggregation choices here. So we'll choose to count, for example, and then on the second input, we need to make sure to choose one of these options that has ignore hidden rows. So option number 5 has ignore hidden rows. You can choose it, and you can also choose option number 1, option number 7, and also option number 3 does have ignore hidden rows. I'll just choose option number 5 here, and then the array is whatever range of cells you want to perform the aggregation on. In this case, we want to count, so we'll choose our range here, close the bracket, and press enter. And you can see here that it tells us that we have 11 cells, but if we also apply a filter to these cells and then go to filter by color here and filter by color, you can see here it tells us that we have 4 green cells here. If we filter by another color, let's say yellow, it tells us we have 3, and so on and so forth. And of course, you can change the type of aggregation here using the function number, so you can sum instead of count by choosing sum here, for example, and so on and so forth. And this also works with conditional formatting. So you can perform that on conditional formatting using the same way. You can filter and know the summation, for example, etc., etc. So this is the third way to sum and count cells by cell color, which is using the aggregate function. All right, so the fourth way for summing and counting cells based on their color is by using the get.cell function. And the get.cell function is a function that was developed using Excel's XLM, also known as the Excel 4.0 macro language, which is an older macro language that was being used in Microsoft Excel before the introduction of VBA. And the Excel 4.0 macro language was introduced with the release of Excel 4.0 in 1992, and it was the primary method for automating tasks and creating complex functions in Excel before VBA became the standard after its release with Excel 5.0 in 1993. Alright, so to use the get.cell function, we'd write equals get.cell, and you will notice here that after opening the bracket, there's no hint about what kind of arguments you need to input to the function. However, for that function, you need to give it 2 inputs. The first input is a number indicating what kind of information you need to extract about the cell. And in our case, because we need to extract information about the fill color of the cell, we'd use 63. And I've actually created a PDF that has more information about the get.cell function, and you can download the PDF along with the example files through the link down below in the description. And for the second input, you need to give it the reference of the cell that you need to extract information about. So in this case, it's going to be this cell here. So after closing the brackets here, and pressing enter, what you will get is that this function is not valid. And this is because you can't use the get.cell function in a cell. So what you need to do is to use it in a named range. So actually copy it, and we need to make sure we have the cell beside the cell that we need to extract information about here selected. So I'll make sure that this cell is selected, and then go to the Formulas tab on the ribbon, go to Name Manager, and create a new named range. So this is going to be a new named range, and I'll name it GET.CELL And for this named range, the formula will be equals get.cell. And for the first input, it's going to be 63. And then for the second input, it's going to be the cell that we need to extract information about. However, you can see here that after selecting the cell, we also get the reference for the sheet included in the cell reference, because my sheet is named get.cell. But we need to make sure not to include the reference for the sheet. So I actually remove the reference for the sheet here. We'll keep the exclamation mark, but we'll make our cell reference relative and not absolute. So I remove the dollar signs here, and we've removed the dollar signs because we're going to drag the formula down. So we need to make sure that the reference is relative, and I'll close the brackets and I'll click OK and close. And now when we reference that named range equals get.cell color and press enter and then drag the formula down, you'll notice here that we get a number that indicates what fill color we have in the cell. So you can see here we get different numbers depending on the cell color. So for green cells we get 43, for blue cells we get 20, and for yellow cells we get 40. And so we can apply this named range here and get the different index numbers, and then we can use a COUNTIF function here, and our range is going to be this range here that we need to count, and we'll absolute it, and the criteria will be the color index number. Close the brackets and press enter, and you can see here that we managed to get the correct count of the different colors of the cells. So we have 4 blue cells, we have 4 green cells, and we have 3 yellow cells. We could also get the sum using the SUMIF function here. So this is going to be our range, and the criteria is going to be this one, and the sum range is going to be this one, and we'll absolute it as well. Close the brackets, press enter, and you can see here that we managed to get the summation of the cells. So you can see here blue, if we select blue cells, it's 9989. So we managed to get the correct summation of the values for the different cell colors. Now, does the get.cell function work for cells that have obtained their fill color using conditional formatting? Let's try that out. So equals get.cell color. Let's use our named range, and as you can notice here, we don't get an index number using the get.cell color named range that we created. And so the get.cell function does not work with cells that have obtained their fill color using conditional formatting. Something else that you need to know about the get.cell function is that if you use it in a workbook and you try to save that workbook, so I'll press Ctrl and S to save it, you can see here that we get an error message that says the following features cannot be saved in a macro-free workbook, which it's pointing to the Excel 4.0 function stored in defined names, which is actually the get.cell function that we created. So to save a file with these features, click no and choose a macro-enabled file type. So we need to make sure to save our workbook as a macro-enabled workbook, so a .xlsm, for example, instead of a .xlsx. So if we press no here, it will take us to the save as, and we'll be able to save our workbook as a different extension. So we can go browse and save to computer here, and we'll save it as a macro enabled workbook and save. And now we're not gonna have problems when we press Ctrl and S. You will just save it with no issues. Another caveat for the get.cell function is that it doesn't update instantly when the fill color for the cell changes. So for example, if we change the fill color for this cell to this purple color, you can see here that the index number for the color has not updated to reflect the new purple color. And it won't update even if you force a recalculation of the workbook. So if you go to formulas and click on calculate now, it still has not updated. You could also force a recalculation by pressing F9 on your keyboard as well. But you can see here that even after forcing the recalculation of all formulas in the workbook, it still has not updated. And it won't update unless you go to the cell that you need to update the value for, and then go to the formula bar here and then press enter. And now it's updated the value, which has now become 29, and this reflects the new purple color. However, we can get around that by adding a volatile function to the get.cell function that we have in our named range. So to do that, we'll go to the formulas tab on the ribbon, go to name manager, and we'll edit our named range here, and we'll add one of the volatile functions that we have in Excel. So for example, we can use the rand function in Excel, and the rand function simply outputs a random number between 0 and 1. So we'll notice here that the color index number will have a fraction as well, or a decimal on it. So we will have the same integer plus a random decimal between 0 and 1. So click OK here and close. And you can see here that now the numbers have a fraction. They are the same integers, but they have a fraction. But to get around that and not have this long number, we could go back to the name manager here and edit our named range, and we'll just multiply the result of the rand function by 0 so as not to add anything to the color index number, but still benefit from the rand function being a volatile function, and that it will force the calculation of the get.cell function in an easier way, and I'll show you how. So we'll press OK and close. And now if we change the color for the cell back again to the yellow color, you can see here that it still has not updated. However, if we press F9 on our keyboard to force a recalculation of the workbook, you can see here that it's now updated to reflect the yellow color, which the color index number for that is 40. Another thing that would force it to recalculate, so let's do the purple color again. So if you type anything in another cell and press enter, it will also recalculate. While if we hadn't had that rand function added to the get.cell function and we type something in a different cell like we did, it wouldn't have updated. I'll just delete the content of that cell. So now we're able to update the cell if we just force a recalculation of the workbook. So what we can do is to record a macro that will force the recalculation of the workbook and just assign it to a button, for example, and then we would just click on that button and force the recalculation of the workbook and simply force the update of the color index numbers. So to do that, we'll go to the developer tab on the ribbon and click on record macro, and we'll create a new macro called recalculate, and we'll press OK. And so what we're going to do is to go to the formulas tab on the ribbon and click on calculate now to record that step, and then we'll stop recording. We'll go to the developer tab on the ribbon and then stop recording. And now we have a macro. It's a simple macro that has only one line that says calculate, which just calculates all the formulas in the workbook. And now we can create a new shape here. So we'll insert a new shape and we'll just call this recalculate. Let's just increase the size of the font and center it and bold it, and we can just assign the macro to that shape here. So right click, assign macro, and click on recalculate and click OK. So now we have the recalculate macro assigned to this button here. So if you change the color back to this yellow color here and click on recalculate, you can see here that now the get.cell function will update its result to reflect the yellow color. Something else to watch for when using the get.cell function is that if you close this .xlsm workbook that we saved and then reopen it again, you'll see here that you get this warning message that you have blocked content, and that the trust document settings have changed and not all content in this file is allowed to run, and that we need to review the trust center settings or contact our IT administrator. And you'll also notice here that the color index number formula here that includes the get.cell function is blocked. So what you need to do in this case is to update your trust center settings, which you can find by either clicking on this button here or going to File and then Options, and then going to Trust Center here and clicking on the Trust Center settings. And here under the macro settings, you need to make sure to enable Excel 4.0 macros when VBA macros are enabled, and click OK and OK again. And now if we just close this warning message and close our workbook here, let's just save it as well, and then we'll just reopen it. You will see here that our workbook opens with no issues and that the color index number gets calculated normally. So that's another thing that you need to watch out for when using the get.cell function, which is that you need to make sure to update your trust center settings to enable or allow Excel 4.0 macros to run when VBA is also allowed. Alright guys, so this concludes our video today where we've shown 4 different ways to sum and count cells by color. So if you found the video helpful, please make sure to like and share the video and subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon to be notified with all future videos. And please make sure to follow us on social media. You'll find the links down below in the description. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next video.